Everyone. I'm Gourav Nagar, Head of Information Security and IT at Upwind, and I'm glad to be a part of TechNATO's Human in Cyber video interview series. The fundamental problem that I keep seeing is that most of the modern security tools that we use today are designed for the world that doesn't exist anymore. They expect infrastructure to stick around. You had servers that live for months, sometimes years in the past, but now containers spin up, do their job, and vanish in seconds. Even serverless functions might exist only for milliseconds. So I would say the first gap that really hurts teams is losing context. When something goes wrong and you're trying to investigate a workload that doesn't exist anymore, the forensic trail is just gone. You can't SSH into a container that was terminated 3 hours ago. That's, I would say, will be the first gap. I think the second gap will be identity sprawl for sure. In multi-cloud environment, when you have AWS IAM, Azure AD, GCP service accounts, all with different permissioning models. Think about a workload in AWS calls something in Azure and triggers a function at GCP. Trying to map that trust chain and understanding who's talking to whom with what permissions is really a hard problem. And third, I would say, will be east-west traffic visibility. Attackers nowadays aren't coming through the front door anymore. They are literally moving between your microservices. And most of the teams have better visibility at the perimeter than inside their own clusters. Well, if I'm advising a security team right now in 2026, I would say runtime security has to be the priority number one. Look what we have done in the past. We have spent years in shifting left, and that's all is very important, matters a lot. But here is the thing. Attackers are not going to come and exploit your Terraform files. They will exploit your running systems. You still need to see what's actually happening at the execution time, what's happening at the runtime. The second one I would say will be the attack cycles are measured in minutes nowadays, and you cannot have a human approving every single action. So you need completely automated playbooks that knows the known bad patterns, and then have human focus on more ambitious stuff that requires judgment. I would say the third challenge that I would see is that sounds basic, but asset inventory is the most important. You cannot protect what you don't know exists. With infrastructure as a code and self-service provisioning these days, shadow cloud is everywhere. Teams need real-time, accurate understanding of their actual attack surface. I would also add API security. Everything is API-driven nowadays. Your control plane, your microservices, your third-party integration. APIs are the new parameters, and frankly, most teams don't have the accurate visibility on that. Well, the visibility gaps that really challenging is the gap that really kills teams, the disconnect between configurations and the behavior. Most teams will tell you that you have an S3 bucket that's publicly accessible, or IAM role that has excessive permissioning. That's the configuration state basically. What they won't tell you is that whether anybody is trying to actively exploit it or not. That's where the distinction comes in. I've seen environments where you have millions of alerts, you have thousands of findings, and team just cannot do anything. They cannot tell the difference between what's theoretical and what's an active threat. So think of it, a bucket that has been public for 2 years with zero suspicious activity and non-critical data versus a bucket that has some critical data and got one suspicious hit from a strange IP. Those are two completely different responses, in this space. I would say the next one will be the dependency visibility. Modern apps pull thousands of libraries, services, and they all are loaded at the runtime. How would you know that what service, what library or service is making your call, who has access to sensitive data? It's a complete black box. I think it's just super challenging. And last one I would say is business context. A tool usually can flag unusual data access, but it cannot really clearly tell you that whether it's coming from an attacker exfiltrating data or maybe your data science team trying to run their quarterly analysis, So that context usually lives in people's head, not in the security systems. So bridging that gap is super hard. I think about this as a division of labor. Let machine do what they're good at. Handling large volume of data at speed, recognizing patterns across millions of logs, correlating events, responding within milliseconds to known threats. Machines are amazing at it, and humans are okay, but the speed and the volume makes it difficult for human to operate at that level. Humans should focus on what they're good at, which is like context, novelty. Is this a malicious threat or is it just unusual, right? That kind of decisions. And is this something that's going to impact the business if we get this wrong? Those are the things that are really important that humans should focus on. And based on their learning, they should apply their learnings and see as much as automation they can do to save time. So I see that a lot of teams make mistakes when they're trying to automate the judgment itself. They are building like complex rules for every edge case and ended up with the systems that generates too many false positives or missed attacks completely, failure on those sides. So what I recommend is investing in good analysis skills around hypothesis-driven investigation. Give your team ability to ask questions to the data and give them an opportunity to try out things, test theories, test hypotheses. And this is where the human can really add a lot of value. Let them use their intuition to try new things. And reviewing same alerts again and again is not a good idea. So the data you have, the telemetry is the problem is not about having less data. It's about asking the better questions. Speed and safety are two critical aspects of cloud security decision making, and I would say security. The security team is not the team of saying no. We are the team that thinks about how. When developers comes with a request, our job is to find a path that meets their objective with least path of resistance. Practically, this can mean few things. First understand what they're really trying to do, gets the real context behind the problem, and is it coming from customer side? Is it arbitrary? Is it a feature request? And everything changes the approach completely. A second, I would say, is offer some sort of a trade-off, like clear trade-off. Here is the fast path with this risk. Here is a secure path that takes like 2 weeks more, and here is a middle ground maybe, and let the business decide with the full information that they once you provide to them. And third, invest in paved roads. I would say think about a solution where you can remove security as a friction. So maybe pre-approved standard architectures or vetted services that teams can move fast without security review every single time, So you're making their life easier. If anything changes from there, then was security review it, and then you make it as a part of the standard process. And lastly, honestly, this relationship matters. When a developer and the architects believe that we are in the same team and information security team is trying to help them succeed, they bring us earlier into the cycle, and that's where we have the most options and least fire drills. Aligning and handling security alerts at volume is really challenging. Alert fatigue is real and it's corrosive. Teams that constantly firefight lose their ability to do the strategic work. They've become really good at operations, but they stop thinking. They just know that, hey, here's an alert, here's a playbook, here's what I need to do and get to work to the next one, right? Eventually, they start ignoring those alerts. It gets really boring, and that's really a dangerous place. So how do you solve this? I would say first is prioritization. Not every alert deserves a full investigation. If you can use some sort of an automated DM alerts, or if you can use some sort of an AI to reprioritize alerts, I think that will be the first thing that you should look into. I think tiering SLAs are also a great option. If there is a P0 or alert which is in tier 1, you got to respond now or quickly as soon as possible. But tier 2 and tier 3 should have a defined SLAs, and automate as much as possible, get as much as logs as you can, build systems that can take decision intelligently. Those are important part. I would say the informational and low quality alerts can be patched together and reviewed at bulk. If you you can find again an automated tool that will be really good for you, good for your organization, to solve that problem. I would say clear ownership is another big challenge. Having a clear roadmap, like who's the incident commander, who's the incident investigator, having clear policy, having clear communication policies, having the pre-vetted template for investigation, having clear notes are very important, and ownership is another big deal. Like, you've got to have an on-call process where you know that who's on call at a certain time, and they're taking the on-call. You have to have them accountable for taking the on-call so that the other team members can take a break at that time, and then the rotation goes on. So everybody gets their chance, and still you manage to put decent work-life balance when one person is taking the load and others are having their downtime. So it's a good balance, and have a clear escalation path. And I would say lastly, the most important part is have a blameless postmortems. So after significant incidents, we ask that what we've learned and what we can automate, how we can improve. If the same alerts keep happening, that's something that's problematic. I think you have to find a way that how you can make sure that the same alerts doesn't come again and again. Either fix the underlying issue or build some sort of an automated response for it. That's actually a really good metric for you to track your performance of Operations Center, that how many times they're doing the same repeated work, and what efforts the team is taking to automate or reduce the touch time on those sort of alerts, right? And finally, the proactive work, threat hunting, architecture reviews, tool improvements. I think all of them are super important. Learning about new technologies. I would say schedule time for it, and take it as seriously as an incident. Otherwise it won't happen. Usually operations teams are super busy in reacting to stuff. They don't really get a time to find the solutions for solving their problem proactively. So I would highly recommend scheduling time and looking what's out there to solve those challenges. So if I have to leave the community with one last thought, I would say the fundamentals of security are still the same, and it matters a lot. We get excited about AI, we get excited about automation and the latest tools. All of them are absolutely important. But the truth is, the organization which we see are getting compromised or breached are not the one who are missing the fancy tool or technologies. They're the one who are missing the basic visibility, a clear ownership, and a discipline to do the unglamorous work regularly, continuously. So build a strong foundation first, and then advanced stuff works much better when it has something solid to build on. Thank you very much.